Hello and welcome to the FCICA webinar series. Thank you for joining us. This webinar will be recorded. The recorded session will be housed on the FCICA Member Center and this educational portal. Be sure to visit fcica.com webinars for upcoming September webinars from Arctic Americas and Novalis Innovative Flooring. FCICA's safety book, Start with Safety, is available electronically, free to members, and printed versions are available for $185. The safety book is an essential item to have in your office and on every job site. Purchase it on FCICA's website today. Thank you for joining us for Drilling Down into Adhesives, a Bona US product webinar. We are pleased to introduce our presenters, Wayne Highlander and Frank Coppolino. Wayne is the Adhesives National Sales Manager, a second-generation hardwood floor contractor with over 30 years of experience on job site glue-down installations, from large commercial work to residential. He is NWFA certified in installation as well as sand and finish, and has been awarded the Vanguard Degree, the Ambassador's Degree, and the Advanced Craftsman's Degree. His background is as an installer, and flooring company owners gives him a great perspective for finding solutions for the challenges faced by builders, contractors, and retail companies. Frank is the Commercial Specification Manager Adhesives and has been in the New York City commercial flooring market for 25 years. He has spent the last decade educating architects and designers on products and installation methods. Frank has extensive knowledge of specialty flooring systems and is a member of the NWFA and MFMA. Welcome, Wayne and Frank. We're excited to have you. I'm going to turn the controls over to you.
Thank you, Christine. And may I say congratulations on the FCICA convention in Austin. It was a fabulous job done by all, so appreciate it. And today, Frank, I'm glad to have you on here, Frank, with your experience in New York. And I think today what we'll talk about some of the challenges installers face today and drill down into what that means to the adhesives and some of the solutions that Bona offers.
Thank you, Wayne. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm happy to offer the assist today. So, at least in my end of the market, in the commercial industry, there are a lot of challenges that we face and have faced over the years. For the most part, I think a lot of these challenges have stayed the same over the decades, but maybe the pace of things and, how quickly things need to get done has changed. And with that, there are new innovative products and techniques that we have to use now in order to keep up with things. But just off the top of my head, I think moisture is probably one of the biggest problems that we have in the industry today. Probably accounts for most of the issues and callbacks that we have. There's obviously the clear one today with everything going on in the world is health and safety and wellness. So we want to make sure we're using products that are safe and healthy for the people. Labor, I can't talk enough about labor shortages across the industry today, especially skilled labor. So that's definitely a big challenge. And those of us that have been in the dealer side of things, when you're bidding work and asked to perform some of these bigger projects, we all know that we're behind schedule before that piece of paper or that contract is even written. So there's definitely challenges there. Also, the big cities, sound transmission, IIC and STC ratings are a big challenge. And keeping up with the latest techniques and recommendations, like dealing with wide plank floors and things like that. These are all big challenges that we're facing today.
Yeah, Frank, and I think you could have thrown up that slide, and you could throw up this slide here, and you could have done that 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and you would see the same challenges. I think it's just magnified now more. You talked about labor shortages and tighter schedules. We're all facing that now, and certainly wide plank is added to that. And when we talk about health and safety, let's kind of go over some of these things and how we can address these challenges today.
Sure. I think at the top of the very list today, it's on everybody's mind, health and safety. The Bona adhesive line is Green Guard Gold certified. It is the first and only adhesive line to get that certification. Now, a lot of people may have seen the green stamp on a lot of buckets and products over the years, but there is a big difference between the Green Guard and Green Guard Gold certification. Green Guard Gold used to be known as the old children's, hospitals, and school certification. So it's a much more stringent certification. It goes through twice the amount of testing. We're proud of our product line that we were able to achieve this certification because it does attribute to positive indoor air quality. It's safer for families, it's safer for workers, and that's very important for us today.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of criteria on how you choose an adhesive, and I think with today what's going on, I mean, that might be the number one criteria for a lot of people. Floors has an outsized effect on the indoor air quality in a building. The floors usually account for more surface area than anything except for perhaps the walls. So they do have an outsized effect on how it affects our environment. With COVID now, with people being indoors longer than ever before, the buildings are closed up tighter than before. We have kids, and I know certainly you do, Frank, a little kid running around on the floor that's 3 feet off of that floor. We walk on them, we breathe everything that they emit. Our pets are on these floors. And, this generation is becoming more aware of our environment. And I think certainly this plays into this. Where adhesives is going today, our product plays into this very well.
Yeah. We talked about schedules and contracts and dealing with bigger projects a little bit earlier. But one of the requirements that we're seeing more and more are well and LEED requirements. So by having that Green Guard Gold certification, that actually contributes up to 3 LEED points on a project when you use that with the flooring assembly. So on the A&D side or the developer side, when you need to accumulate those points, it's actually a good thing to have because you could focus more on the product, the flooring itself that you want to put down, and knowing that you'll get those 3 LEED points from using a Green Guard Gold certified adhesive like the Bona RA51 or RA59.
All right, so let's talk about some of the other challenges, Frank.
Well, we talked about moisture being the number one issue. So,
yep. I'll tell you the scary thing about this slide. I think there's like 11 different causes of moisture, natural and artificial, that we could run into on a job site. Before I ever got in the hardwood floor business, I'll tell you that I was in a laborers union. Every day we poured concrete, and this was a typical scenario for us. The carpenters would build the forms. We would put out the 6 mil visqueen underneath. The iron workers would set the rebar, and then concrete day comes where we're going to pour the concrete. And if it had been raining for, several days or weeks before that, we would take rebar, the laborers, we would take rebar and poke holes in the visqueen to let the water run out. Now, this wasn't malicious. It was just making our life easier. And then when the truck would show up, if it was in the middle of August and it's hot out and you drop the chutes down from the concrete truck, and that concrete comes down the chute and it's very slow and hard to move, inevitably one of us laborers would jump up in the truck, take the water hose, and start squirting water into that mixture. It may have left the plant at the proper cement to water ratio, but certainly not by the time we got done with it. And what I didn't realize, and again, it wasn't malicious, we were just making our job easier. What I didn't realize at the time until I got in the flooring business, when the poor flooring contractor comes along, he has no idea any of this occurred. I've gone on the job sites where the tile guy is running, 2 tile guys are running saws in the middle of the living room, or on the job site where there's water going everywhere. Had I not shown up on that day, I would not have known that ever occurred. So, from that experience on, I realized that I have to make sure that substrate proves to me that it's going to not cause my job to fail. So, moisture, still the biggest, concern in the industry. With all the technology today, by the way, with all the testing and all the technology, it's still one of the biggest concerns out there.
I would absolutely agree. I've got a similar story. I'll make this one quick because I know we're limited on time. Years ago, did a project downtown Manhattan for a big developer. It was roughly 200,000 square feet. So we were very good about keeping our daily documentation because it's very important. NWFA requires that you do a certain amount of testing, so do the manufacturers. So we did our RH tests and checked for moisture in the slab. We checked for flatness and, moisture in the air. And we would do this before, during, and after installation. So when the project was finished, or at least each unit was finished, we'd ask the superintendent of the job to come in, sign off he'd close the door, and essentially he owns, that part of the project until we finally work our way out of the building. Well, toward the end, I think everything was done in the building except for the lobby, and they lost or ran out of funding. So they locked up that building nice and tight for a full season. And when they came back, what they noticed was floors buckling, curling, cupping, some of them heaving over the floors. Remember, we've gone through an entire cycle with no HVAC, no climate control, nothing. And these buildings had windows floor to ceiling. Of course, they tried to say, well, you didn't put the floors down right, But after reviewing all the documentation, and they had their John Hancock on everything, we won the case. So they had to replace the building. Everybody knows how painful that can be. And I guess the moral of our stories is not only do you have to do your due diligence and test, follow the recommendations from the manufacturer and NWFA, but you want to make sure that you're using products. By the way, the adhesive that was specified on that job had a water base to it. You want to make sure you use products that limit your risk and protect you as much as possible, because we're not dealing with ideal situations all the time. We're going on these jobs and you've got trades trampling over you as you're putting the floor in, stampering through wet adhesive and all kinds of, no facade on the building, things like that. So it's very important to limit your risk, use products you know and trust, and follow, read the buckets, packaging, and follow the correct guidelines. So with that, Wayne, how do we know how to pick the right adhesive?
Well, I've said this before. When I the last couple of years of doing floors, we switched over to Bona's adhesive. I know what I liked about it. I know what my guys liked about it. But when I went to work for Bona, I had to know it on a whole nother level. And not only did I have to know ours, I also had to know how we stood up with our competition and what have you. So I went on a journey, and through the help of one of our chemists and do some research of ours versus the other products out there. And when I did this, what was interesting to me is what I guess for lack of a better word, what I ran across was sometimes a lot of marketing jargon, like holds really good or really strong adhesive. I've always said if I could bench press 400 pounds, I'd be able to work that into every conversation. If I could only bench press 80 pounds, I probably wouldn't talk about it that much. I think there are 5 things that you have to consider in adhesives. I think you always have to consider shear strength. Shear strength is the strength that stops that floor moving from side to side when it wants to go into motion. It's critical that you have a really good shear strength. I think you always have to consider tensile strength, which is the stops the floor from moving up and down. I think of end grain blocks, for instance, that expand up and down, and for quarter-sawn floors that instead of expanding from side to side, they mostly expand up and down. So tensile strength is important. I think you always have to consider elongation, especially in concert with the shear strength. Elongation, just to give you an example with that, if I took a thick rubber band and I stretch it out, and I let it go and it snaps back into place, versus say, for instance, saltwater taffy, where I just stretch it out and it just, I let go of it, just nothing happens. So it's very important that you have really good elongation. And just to give you an example of this, I said I used to do inspections. I saw a job site one time where the guy wanted to do a really nice job. It was a pre-finished floor. He did not want to top nail the first 3 rows just for aesthetics. So he went to the big box store. He bought an adhesive that doesn't have the elastomeric qualities that you need for hardwood flooring. So he glued the first 3 rows. He took his nail gun. He nailed the floor all the way to the other side of the room, 30 feet away. And then there again, he didn't want to top nail, so he used his adhesive. But by the time I inspected the floor, and it was a 5-inch plank, it went from nice and flat, in about the middle of the room, it went up like a wine barrel, up about 25 inches off the floor, and then back down flat again. So he killed the expansion on one side of the room. He killed the expansion on the other side of the room, and that floor had nowhere to go. So it's very important that you choose an adhesive that has these proper qualities. Yeah, we started this talking about moisture protection and health. I think that permeability is huge. We'll get into moisture protection a little bit later on, but you also, and I caution people sometimes to say, well, we use this adhesive on the last 3 or 4 jobs and everything went fine. I don't understand why we had a problem on this one. It may have had the qualities and the moisture protection to protect on those jobs, but a job where you may have outpaced your moisture, then it's critical to know what through testing what your moisture is in that substrate. I think you also have to consider SDC and IIC ratings, and Frank, I think we'll get into that down the road here.
Yes, yes. So, Wayne, I like to relate everything to a story or a project or an experience that I've had. So we had a very large job that we did in the Bronx. It's about 400,000 square feet. Originally, it was specified as a double glue down with a sound mat, but because they had to self-level it with some gypsum, the mat was value engineered out. They wound up using our adhesive for the sound properties, but we'll get into that later. But before they approved it, they wanted to do some testing to make sure it would hold well to the gypsum self-leveling and that they wouldn't have any problems. Remember, this is 400,000 square feet, 2 very large towers. So they took 3 floors in the building where the leveling had been poured and cured, and they used the Bona US and 3 other brands on 3 different floors. So there was a bunch of tests to be done. After they were fully cured, a little more than 24 hours later, probably closer to 3 days later, they came back, and we had the team there videoing the floor and laborers there trying to, with a crowbar and a mallet, trying to remove the different test areas. Each area was roughly 2 by 2, 4-inch solid plank glued directly to the slab. So when he started with the 851 area, I mean, he was really fighting with that hammer and chisel, and when he finally popped those boards loose, an inch of that self-leveling came up with the planks, and the planks were all broken up into little pieces. So that shows you that very strong tensile strength that you were talking about, the up and down. As he went over to product B, C, and D, B across the board basically just was the easiest one to remove. A little bit of adhesive residue on the floor and on the wood, but for all essentially, it all came up pretty easily. Product C and D, a little bit better. Some boards cracked in half, but for the most part, the slab remained intact, and it was very easy to remove. So it shows you the tenacity of that tensile strength that we have. As we move to the lower floors, they try to actually remove it with a sledgehammer or a large mallet, banging sideways, trying to remove these 4-inch pieces. The area with the Bona US adhesive, basically the planks were pulverized. There were splinters all over the place. The glue was still stuck to the floor with the lower portion of the wood flooring. So we know that bond or that shear strength is very good. The others, again, product B, it was very easy to remove. C and D did a little bit better than B, but overall, that 851 held. The bond was so tenacious. The labor was breaking the sweat. Was very impressed with it. So it is very important to research your products, look at the data sheets, see what the tensile shear strengths. Don't go for marketing jargon and just words that say that it holds really well. Do your research and cover yourself, because you never know on these jobs what kind of conditions you're in and how you have to handle them. So with all that said, Wayne, our adhesive, the Bona US is a silane. The other products that were tested on that project, they were all urethanes. So can you tell us a little bit about what the difference is between a silane and a urethane, traditional urethane adhesive?
Yeah, silane is a derivative of silicone. The urethanes came along in the 1960s, and thank God they did. They got us out of the Stone Ages with the old tar and asphalt, type of product. But the silane adhesive has all the qualities that you want in a urethane and then some. And the then some is that, it's a moisture rejector and adhesive promoter. That's why they use it around caulking, around tile and showers and that type of stuff. There's no debate anymore where the industry is going. I mean, I think 9 out of 10 floors in Europe are probably being installed with a silane adhesive. One thing the installers like about this product, and it jumps off the page to them, it certainly did us, and it was the reason when I told you we changed, it was the reason we changed, is that we don't etch the finish. If we get our adhesive, the Bona adhesive on a pre-finished floor, and it's on there for 2 or 3 days, you can easily remove it without etching the finish. We've all had that call back, if you've been in this trade at any length of time at all, that you install, say, a 2,000 square foot room, and you get the call from the homeowner or the building owner, gosh, the floor looks great, but anything that comes after that word "but" is all bad, right? I mean, I've seen where, 7 and 8, 10 boards with a little fingerprint here or there that they couldn't get off. Like even if a urethane, even if you can get it off, a lot of times you'll etch the finish and have a sheen issue. And so sometimes the repair is longer than the install. And we talked about at the beginning of this, one of the challenges, labor challenges. Everybody would probably double the size of the company if we had the people. So our shorter windows of time, the saving us on the callback for that type of thing is just fantastic. We talked about the health differences, and also the moisture protection per square foot is phenomenal with the silane adhesive. So I like the analogy of the rotary phone versus the iPhone. I remember when we first got pagers, and I was like, wow, this technology is fantastic. And then we got the flip phones, and how can it get any better than this? There's no debating anymore where we're going with adhesives, and it's going towards silanes. And our product is a German engineered product. And when you talked about looking at our specs, in some regards, I think we're almost over engineered. And we now make this in Monroe, North Carolina, and probably in Bona's 102-year history, maybe the fastest moving product we've ever had.
No, I would agree. So one of the things, Wayne, I think spread rates also, when it comes to the silanes, you definitely get more yield out of a bucket than you would out of a urethane. You don't have that big skim over, that hockey puck over the top that's wasting a lot of product. So spread rates, it's very common to get more out of a 3-gallon pail of our product than you would out of a 5-gallon pail of urethane. And with that, I guess let's talk about spreading the adhesive a little bit. Explaining why it's important to do it the right way.
So, yeah, and I agree. I'll just go real quick. I think it checks off all the boxes, Frank. I mean, you're right. For the installer, I mean, for green grab and ease of use, and there's no wasted pails. You can take a pail, use half of it, throw it in the van, open it a month later, there's almost no skin over, and you go right back to work, if there is skin over at all. We've all had those urethane pails where it takes the jaws of life to open the pail back up again. And like you said, you're fighting through that 2 inches of a hockey puck. The reason we have this slide on the trowel here is because I think it is one of the most misused, abused piece of equipment in our vans. It is so important that the installers are using the proper trowels. It is so important to Bona that we put 2 clip-on trowels in every pail. I've seen a $10 trowel stop a $69,000 job. There was an issue on the job, and the guys were using the wrong size trowel, and it was game over. So all a trowel is a measuring device. So it is super important that you use the proper trowel. And on this slide right here, you have this is a good example. You talked about spread rates. On the picture on the right, you'll see where the guys are kind of floating the adhesive out. It's like a urethane adhesive, and they're floating it out. A lot of times you need to use that much adhesive to get the moisture protection that you're after. The silane adhesive, you really don't. And the trowel picture on the left would be more appropriate for what we'd want you to put down.
Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, not just with our adhesive, but with all of the manufacturers of adhesive today, using a specific trowel notch for a certain application is what gets you to your warranty, right? So if you're trying to stretch out that adhesive and you're using a very small notch for something that they recommend you don't do, or you should use a different notch for, you're going to avoid your warranty. Now, we'll talk about warranties a little bit more later on, but just keep that in mind. It's not just what's available, what you have in the truck, and the easiest, what you like to use. You have to use what is recommended in order to get the performance that you need. And again, that is why we put the trowel blades in the bucket to help installers not worry as much about getting that trowel to the job. So,
well, yeah, it is to help the installers. But Frank, as the owner of the company, man, I was always scared to death that my guys, even with good intentions, with the guys go to the distributor to pick up a trowel and we're out of stock, we're out of inventory, leaves them with some bad choices there.
Mm-hmm. So we have different types of installations. The first one, I guess, when we'll talk about are glue downs. So when we're talking about a full spray glue down, we're talking about the Bona R851 or the Bona R859. Easy way to distinguish the two is the 851 is a 3-gallon pail. The 859 is in a 4-gallon pail for those that want that bigger pail. Could you explain a little bit to us about some of the properties of our 851 and 859, limitations, and benefits to the customer?
Yeah, I mean, we went over some of these here, but I'll just tell you that we'll go up to 16-inch wide on a engineered floor and 9-inch wide on a solid, which is because of the shear strength and the moisture the protection that it has in that pail. It's able to do that. We can't. There's no denying where the industry is going as far as plank floors. It's getting wider and wider. I was on a job in Cincinnati the other day that there were 16-inch wide planks, all like 10 feet long. And so the challenges for the installer, I mean, we're asking more of our adhesive today than we did even 5 years ago, right? I mean, we're putting our adhesive in situations that we would never put them in years ago and expect them to succeed in any case. So I think wide plank is a big determining factor of what product you're going to use, because of you need those type of properties that'll hold that floor in place and be successful. So we'll talk about nail glue assist a little bit later on. Maybe it's on your next slide. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a couple down the road. But just to your point, we have two adhesives that we could trowel out in the bucket, essentially the same product, 851 and 3 gallon, 859 and a 4 gallon. But they are truly an all-in-one adhesive. So you get the moisture protection, you get the sound absorption. You could go and glue down solid. You can glue down engineered up to 16 inches wide. So it actually helps the distributor. It helps the installer take the guesswork out of which product should I use. It's essentially one glue, 4 trowels, and you're ready to rock and roll. So it just makes life a little bit easier. And with that, we'll talk about the next type of installation, which is the double glue down. Right? You heard me mention earlier that we were able to value engineer out padding from one of those large projects that we did, and that was because of a height restriction. The 851 will give you an IIC rating of 71 and an SDC rating of 65. So you get exceptional sound absorption right out of the bucket without even needing to use the sound mat. But in the case where the designer, architect, builder requires a mat, you can use the same, and you should use the same adhesive to glue the mat to the floor and then the wood to the mat. The reason why we recommend using the same adhesive for both is because of that elongation that you mentioned earlier on. When these wider plank floors move, they expand and contract, they're going to pull on that mat. And if you use a construction type adhesive or an inexpensive type adhesive to save some money on the lower layer, essentially what you're doing is you're limiting the bond that you have. So when that floor moves, it's going to want to separate the mat from the floor, and then you'll get hollow spots and things like that. The other benefit to using the 851 or 859 in a double glue down situation is it will enhance the sound rating of that mat, right? So if you've got, typically they ask for a 50 or a 55, our adhesive alone gives you a 71. Now it's not adding the two numbers together. There is an average depending on the product, but you will be enhancing that system. So everybody out there that's specifying, if you're worried about sound or you're worried that the slab is not dense enough, you can use this in a double glue down situation for both layers. Mat to the floor, cork to the floor, even felt, and then the wood to the mat, cork or felt on top. So just an added benefit there.
Well, I was just thinking right now, between the two of us, I think we got 70 years experience, and all mine was on the West Coast.
All mine on the East Coast.
Yes. All mine was on the West Coast in a glue down market. But I got an education when I went to New York, worked with you on some of these big high rises, and the logistics of just simply getting the products into the building, and the union labor cost. So to be able to get the IIC and SDC ratings and omit that step and maybe value engineer it down, where you're not having to put that product on a job site is absolutely huge.
Oh, on a high rise job, Teamster drivers, union elevator operator, rolls that weigh anywhere from 60 to 100 pounds, and the added adhesive layer, it's a tremendous savings to be able to VE it out. But again, if you have to use it, at least you're getting a better rating. With that, we're going to talk about the glue assist that you mentioned early on, which has become more and more common, and actually is a recommendation now for the NWFA.
So be aware. If you don't know, the National Wood Flooring Association changed its guidelines in 2019 to reflect some of the challenges that we've come across with the white plank floors. So they're saying now that any floor that's 5 inches and over, if it's a nail down, it should be nail glue assist. A lot of flooring manufacturers have already made this demand in their manufacturer guidelines as well. look at the way the industry's going. As a matter of fact, I was at the NWFA maybe a couple of years ago at one of their conferences, and there was a side seminar of noisy, popping, squeaking floors, which was, by the way, the largest attended seminar in the event. They're having a spike in calls and complaints about this issue, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. We're going to wider and wider plank. The wider the plank, the less fasteners we're able to use per square foot. You're going to use half as many fasteners in an 8-inch plank as you will a 4-inch plank, which is probably exactly the opposite of what we need. So we're going to wider plank. We're going to thinner engineered floors. The old 3/4 inch solid flooring with the 16 gauge nail guns. It's a different story. So now we're going with thinner tongues to hold the fasteners. We're going with small gauge fasteners now, the 18 gauge fasteners with the staples or cleats that don't frankly hold as well. We have subfloors that are suspect in my mind. A lot of these OSB subfloors that expand and contract and move with the seasons, allowing the floors, the nails and fasteners to move a little bit, and where you get your squeaking and popping. We're having wider, in some cases, the joists are wider than they used to be. They used to be 16-inch joists, and now it's not the case so much anymore. This is a perfect recipe for squeaking and popping. So Bona sausages came out a while ago, and it has been just a really big hit for us. Is that and there's a diagram up ahead of the recommended ways that the NWFA wants you to use this, and we follow these as well. Some people will use a serpentine method. Some people will use the parallel across perpendicular to the flooring or parallel. But there's a diagram there. But my point is this too. Be aware that if it is a nail glue assist, they consider the fasteners the primary installation method, and the adhesive the secondary. So it is important that you still stay on your nailing schedule. Okay, but to eliminate the popping and squeaking is been is huge for that, and it's inexpensive. And if your guys are like mine, when we install on a floor, if we're introducing adhesive to the install where we're nailing, it's quite common that you can maybe get the compressor hose in the glue and it gets on the floor. I'll tell my guys sometimes, with the Bona adhesive, just wait till tomorrow. We'll take it off with a microfiber mop if there's anything that got on there. Super easy and clean to take off. You're also seeing people doing more of what we call a skip trowel method, where every 8 inches or so perpendicular to the floor, they're taking the short end of the trowel and troweling it out to give it some of that help with the squeaking and popping. So this has become widely popular, and by the way, it is a guideline for the National Wood Flooring Association. So be aware that when we came out with this product, everybody goes, "Oh, Wayne, that's fantastic. It holds the floor great. I don't have to worry about that anymore." But now my concern is I'm not putting a building paper down. And what about the moisture concerns?
Right. So in the case where we do have a nail down with a glue assist or a floating floor, where there would typically be where there wouldn't be an adhesive in between to help block some of that moisture, or even an LVT floor that's floating, and you're concerned about moisture coming through, what is it that we could do to protect ourselves and get that extra moisture protection without having the use of a paper?
Yeah, so, contractors rarely get optimum conditions, right? We're asked to go into buildings, with tighter schedules now and less labor, and we both live in the real world, and we know it's like to delay the job because the moisture content in the subfloor might be too high. Or we can roll the dice and hope we don't get that call down the road. After all, even stable 8-inch wide engineered floors will move. The R540 is one coat. You roll it on a wood substrate, and it protects you up to 20%. Now, the NWFA guidelines, if you're using a plank floor, which is defined by anything that's wider than 3 inches, you should have no more than 2 percentage points difference in the subfloor and the finished floor, which, especially on a commercial job, it's hard to come by. In most residential jobs, it is as well. So this one coat of this protects up to 20%, which is huge. By the way, and I'll talk about it later, but one coat of this on a plywood, on a concrete substrate protects you up to 18 pounds and 95 RH as well. Okay, on a wood substrate, one coat is all we want you to use, it really what this offers to me is peace of mind. It's just is pretty inexpensive cost per square foot, and does a great job of we take in this industry, we take a lot of the onus on us as contractors. We're giving buildings that are a lot of times not ready for us. We're put into situations on top of other trades where it's not ideal and exposes us to liability. And this cost, especially if you can pass this cost on, is a great way to eliminate those kind of factors.
Right. And then let's not forget, with the advent of all this new types of sheathing that are out there that they're using on subfloors, you're not always finding plywood anymore. A lot of it's OSB or Advantech type systems where they're, in order to protect the sheathing from moisture, there's this resin or waxy coating over the top. So best practice would be to abrade that, buff it off or screen it off so that the adhesive can adhere properly to the floor. Well, the R540 is also acts as a primer so that you don't have to spend all that time and labor abrading that subfloor and preparing it for the glue down. And again, that also relates back to the labor shortage, right? So you don't really need much skilled labor to take a single component product like this, shake it, pour it out on the floor, and roll it out with a 1/4-inch snap roller. You get the extra moisture protection. You come back the next day and you're ready to go. So again, this product I think should be on most jobs. It just makes things flow a lot better. The other thing that it does is it also allows the adhesive spread rate to increase when you use it. Okay, because you're sealing the pores of that concrete or that plywood. So you're going to get much more yield out of your adhesive. In the long term, you'll be saving some money with that. So
yeah, you also do not need to use a building paper. I want to make that clear that you can omit the building paper now. In today's fast-paced construction, it's really not much of a deterrent anyhow. So you can take that out of the equation.
Okay. All right. So Wayne, we're going to talk a little bit about warranties. We touched on a little bit here and there, especially in the center of the slide. We have a term that we're seeing more and more these days called the unlimited warranty.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a two-part question. One, are unlimited warranties truly unlimited, or are there limitations to those warranties?
Yeah.
And two, why doesn't Bona have an unlimited warranty?
So just to be clear, our warranty is we can take you up to 18 pounds in 95 RH, which is not that far off of standing water. I said before we're a 102-year-old company, and in the flooring industry, we don't make products for any other industry except for hardwood floors, and hardwood floors is our DNA. I mean, we know where floors want to live. Our feeling is we don't want to put a contractor in a position to fail, and I think a lot of times my personal feeling is the unlimited warranties is almost a disservice to the industry because we're putting contractors in situations that it's almost an unattainable feat to get the 100% coverage and hit all the criteria to get the unlimited warranties. So what happens is if you're not able to, then that warranty defaults to a 3 pound and 75 RH in a lot of cases, which by the way is an entry-level moisture protection. You don't see in Europe anybody offering an unlimited warranty. Frankly, I think we're out of our mind over here. So I'd rather not have that. Put our customers in that, put our distributors through that, put people in that situation where they're going to a little fine print there that you didn't get it quite. And by the way, some installation techniques will prohibit you from getting the 100% coverage unless your subfloor is absolutely pristine and perfectly flat. The likelihood of getting it, 100% coverage is slim to none. And let's take a best case scenario, Frank. I mean, let's say your brother-in-law is the adhesive rep, and he says, you know what, Frank, we're going to cover it. It doesn't matter. We'll take care of it for you anyhow. We both tore out a slab tore out a hardwood floor on a slab. Is there a worse job in this industry? Number one. Number two, there ain't nobody coming to help us do it, right? I mean, and when we talk about labor shortage, I mean, you could either be on another side of town making money on a job or taking care of this one, and nobody makes money on a claim. I've heard that report not long ago that a tear out and a claim and redo is almost like 7 times the cost of the original install. And nobody has time for that. We didn't have time for that 30 years ago. We sure as hell don't have time for that today. So I think it's, any inspector in this industry will tell you it's a responsible thing to do is to test the slab. This isn't a Bona rule. This is an industry guideline that you should test the slab. And that's our stance on it, and I think it's a responsible thing to do.
Yeah, and Wayne, just to piggyback on what you said, the testing is a recommendation of the NWFA, but it is also a requirement of most of the manufacturers out there. So without that documentation, we talked early on about daily documentation. Without those readings and proof of those readings, that warranty really doesn't exist. And just to go into it a little bit further, when we're talking about the Smith residence where they did a bedroom or a living room, it's bad enough to have to displace a family over a couple of 100 feet or 1,000 feet. What happens when you're on a high-rise job in a big city and there are hundreds of thousands of feet involved? The likelihood of you getting 100% coverage on a job that massive and keeping that warranty is just simply, the odds are not. You have a better chance of winning the lottery. So again, we want to limit our risk, use products that protect us, and it's Bona's way. We're upfront, we're transparent with everything, and that's why the numbers are always published on everything that we do.
Part of this was the genesis for coming out with the Bona R540, is that when you're using a roll-on type product, you can visually see that you're hitting every part of that slab. Even that slab is not, a perfectly level, which, a lot of times we're not just flat out not going to run across that. If you're concerned that you got 3 or 4 installers on the job and are they going to get 100% coverage, by using the 540, you're touching every piece of that slab.
And then, just throwing it out there, Bona, I believe, has more boots on the ground in every territory than I could honestly say than just about any other manufacturer out there. So if you're not sure what to use, how to use it, or the conditions of the slab or whatever, you have people out there you can lean on, from territory managers to adhesive managers. We're there for you. We're here to guide you. So use it. We're here for you. Here's just a quick slide. We talked about different challenges in the workplace today and from years ago till now. There are some solutions listed that we spoke about throughout the presentation. And before we get into the Q&A, I just want to mention that we do have 2 CEU courses out there that we would be happy to host for those of you who are architects and designers or work with architects and designers. Each course is for 1 credit. So please reach out. Let us know if you're interested in something like that, and they will get credit for their certifications by taking those 1-hour courses.
I think we also have like 13 different regional training centers across the country. We've had in some cases where they'll do mock-ups in one of our schools to present to the architect or designer. So that's always offered as well. So
yes, and those schools, the registration fills up quick. But if anybody's interested in being a Bona certified craftsman, again, please reach out. We'll connect you to the local territory manager that will set up that school for you. And Bona, again, certifies the top 1% in the country. So again, if you're interested in being part of the Bona team, let us know. And with that, I guess we'll turn it over to some questions.
Thank you so much, Wayne and Frank, for your presentation. So if the audience has any questions or comments, please submit them now in the question box to the left of your screen. We'll wait a moment to see if any come through. Wayne and Frank, we have a question here, and it says, we rarely perform moisture testing on our projects. What is the amount of protection your adhesive provides?
Yeah, and I think we touched on that a little bit. We go to 18 pounds and 95 RH, and we actually have 2 ways to get you there. We have one of our trowels in the pail has the nubs on it that will get you to 18 pounds and 95 by using that trowel. Some contractors don't want to put that much adhesive on the floor, right? I can think of like when we used to do herringbone floors or chevron floors, we just don't want that much on the floor. So we can also get you there by using 1 coat of our Bona R540, and then using our standard trowel, our Bona standard trowel, the 1250 or the 1500 or beyond. That will get you 1895.
Correct. And that also applies to larger jobs. So if you're doing a small job and you need that extra moisture protection, you can use that moisture barrier trowel with a little nub on the bottom. They'll give you that skim coat of adhesive. But when you're going into larger and larger projects, thousands of feet, tens of thousands of feet, it will be more cost effective to roll out a coat of the 540 and use the standard trowel, because when you you have to do the math. When you figure out how much product you need, you'll notice the 540 with the 851 or 859 is going to save you a lot of money on a very large job.
Okay, next question. What moisture tests are acceptable when checking a concrete slab?
Yeah, so the two primary tests you'll see is the calcium chloride test and the RH test. I'll just say that to kind of give you the difference between the two, a calcium chloride test to me is like an X-ray of the slab, right? It shows like maybe a quarter-inch down in there what's going on in the slab, and whereas the RH test is like an MRI. You're drilling 40% into the depth of that slab, and it gives you a much better reading. It's more accurate. You can actually get the results back now 24 hours. It used to take 72 hours. But be aware that most people do the calcium chloride test wrong. You need to make sure you bring the calcium chloride test to the job site 24 hours ahead of time. You should scour the slab or the area you're going to place the test 24 hours ahead of time, because even that can skew the results. And really, two of the tests should be side by side within 3 feet of the outside walls. The reason for that is they kind of correlate each other. It's a big mathematical formulation to get to what the results are. So one should not come back at 6 pounds, either come back at 11 pounds, for instance. So it's three tests per 1,000 square feet and one additional test for every 1,000 square foot after that.
Okay, next question. You mentioned adhering to gypsum. Is a primer required before gluing the floor down?
Okay, so a primer is not required, but we do recommend, the NWFA recommends that the gypsum be 3,000 PSI or greater. If you read our literature, we actually state 2,500 PSI or greater. A primer is not needed, but what the recommendation is when you pour gypsum, you tend to get this kind of what looks like pond scum, we call it latenance, that comes to the surface of the floor. You want to make sure you buff or remove that first, and you have clean gypsum, and then you could adhere directly to it with our product.
Okay, next question. I understand we need to use one coat of the R540 when using your adhesive for a glue down. Is the application the same for a floating floor?
Okay. Wayne, you want to take that? Or
Sure. So, yeah, some people will say on wood subfloors, if one coat is great, gosh, 2 coats must be better. We don't want you to use any more than one coat on a wood substrate. And a concrete substrate, the same. One coat is fine if you're using our adhesives. However, if you're doing a floating floor where you're not using our adhesives, or you're floating plywood over it, for instance, where no adhesive is involved, we do require you to use 2 coats. It's interesting. We're seeing more mold complaints and mold issues and edge curling and what have you with those LVT type floors. Where I guess we're long enough in this industry to know that there's really nothing bulletproof. So it is becoming more of a concern, and especially we've come across several mold issues and talking to other inspectors out there. So 2 coats under that product is what you need if you're not going to use our adhesive. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Also, if you're floating any other type of floor, there's a lot of LVT, LVP out there that's being used. If those floors are floating and you're worried about moisture getting trapped between the LVT and LVP and the subfloor and creating a mold issue, the R540 2 coats can be used to protect you from that moisture transmitting through or permeating through at a high rate.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, it does not appear that there are any more additional questions from the audience. So if there are no more questions, that concludes our webinar. And on behalf of FCICA, thank you, Wayne and Frank, today.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Just want to also highlight that SIMS, you may now navigate to the Submit Credit tab to receive credit. Please note you must be signed into the education platform for this feature to work. If you have any issues, please let us know. Thank you again. This is the conclusion of the webinar. Thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.